Welcome. It's Brucial, and this is Unscrew the News. I'm excited to have my next guest. Very excited to have him back. Returning guest, Brett Oland, President and CEO of Bow Valley Credit Union. I reached out to him the last couple of days and saying that we needed to touch base and have an update on what he sees going on in the world. So I'm excited to have him joining us. And in case you are not familiar, Bow Valley Credit Union is definitely a place to be spending some of your time and some of your energy, especially if you are interested in Alberta independence. Even if you're not, supporting an Alberta business, I think, is critical at this time. Anyway, as I always like to say, I am going to give a little plug to my one of my favorite local businesses, and that's for nuggetstacker.com. And I am not your investment advisor, but I do suggest getting gold and silver. And I think that Brett will probably agree with me. Getting gold and silver for your family's future is a good idea. Nugget Stacker is a great place to do that. And Brett, I know, has a great offering as well through Bow Valley Credit Union. So I won't discount that as well. All right, we're going to get into it here right away. I appreciate Brett Oland joining me. And I'll bring him on stage here right away. Stand by. Hello, Mr. Oland. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hello. How are you?
I'm excellent. We are not experiencing any snow here, just a little bit of wind and wetness, but apparently you got some of the frozen stuff.
Well, that's
June 1st.
I live in Canmore, but I'm in beautiful downtown Cochrane today, where the wind is blowing, as you can see in the background, and the snow is threatening to fly. So there you go.
Well, as I said to you before we hit record, I was noticing somebody had posted a screenshot of Sunshine Village, probably a webcam up there, and there was something like 32 centimeters up at the hill. So back to skiing. It's June 1st. That's a great time to get back at it, I guess.
Yeah, watch that climate change. So there you go.
Well, isn't it heating up? I thought that was the narrative that we were following now.
Oh, well, here we are. So
well, awesome to have you. Thank you so much for being here. One of the things I wanted to highlight just briefly, and I mentioned it in my intro, is that obviously Bow Valley Credit Union, Alberta-based business, and I love to support Alberta businesses, and I'm seeing a real surge of people coming to Bow Valley Credit Union. Just tell me why that you're seeing that happen in your neck of the woods.
What a bit of a tagline that we've created around it is banking without a lecture. So especially in the past number of years, there's been a lot of virtue signaling around a bunch of different areas in the world. And we didn't have any part of it. There's a lot of financial institutions out there that took a stand on this and took a stand on that and that type of thing. And we find that the most part, people just want to come in, do their banking, and not have that lecture at them. And another big piece is we're big proponents of, you touched on a little earlier, gold, silver, Bitcoin. We're big proponents of that because we see what's happening in the world with massive government spending, deficit spending, and we really acknowledge that people are struggling out there, especially around inflation, and that's a direct result of massive amounts of money printing and the continued perpetual debt machine running in the background. And we give people the tools to help protect themselves, their hard-earned savings, against that perpetual machine in the background. These tools around gold, silver, and Bitcoin, we find are going to be a very helpful hedge in the years going forward as we continue to dive deeper into debt and inflation. So.
Well, I know early on in our relationship. So when I first met you, I think that you were on a speaking tour at a number of different speaking engagements, and you were talking about gold and silver and how Bow Valley Credit Union was really targeting being invested in gold and silver. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for. Somebody speaking my language. It's so wonderful to have a bank that, is not hoity-toity and, you're just a number. I do love my branch experience, and I tell you that on a regular basis. I love going in to speak to your staff, and great people to work with for sure.
Yeah, and appreciate that, and we've done pretty well, definitely on the gold and silver side since I started yapping about it as well, and that's what it does. It works in the background for protect you against that massive inflation machine, and we've seen that in spades, especially in 2026. So
yeah, fantastic. Okay, so let's move on to the news. I had said to you I wanted to bring up this clip here, so give me a chance while I do this here, while I get this queued up. And this is probably one of yours and my favorite MPs in Ottawa, Anita Anand. And obviously I say that tongue in cheek because she it tends to be just another robot in the mission to demolish Canada. But in here, she's talking about how Canada is expected to be the second fastest growing economy in the G7 this year. Let's just listen to her. It's only 12 seconds.
Canada is expected to have the second fastest growing economy in the G7 this year and next. In the first 4 months of this year alone, we landed over $10 billion in commercial deals for Canadian businesses.
I cannot believe that they continue to say this, even though it has now been, I don't know where the report came from, but saying that we are technically in a recession. And I'm sure that you and I and many viewers already felt that. Brett, what do you have to say about Anita and just, the gaslighting is unbelievable.
Well, yeah, what's surprising is people that continue to buy into it, and they're just not even sort of paying attention, I guess, at the grocery store and seeing what's happening. And the lack of productivity in this country is just truly astounding. She talks about 10 billion coming in the door, but what about the $500 billion that's exiting?
Yes.
is a big piece of that. And it's they can sort of massage the wording around calling it a technical recession. It is actually the definition of a recession when you have two negative quarters of GDP. And I would argue it's probably been north of a decade and a half of negative GDP, but they do tricks to this GDP data. So they count government spending in GDP, so they can goose the system with something like that. So it's not a surprise to me that we've seen government workers just explode in numbers because it helps goose the GDP.
Yes,
as well as any printing in the background. Nominally we may be growing, but in real terms, we're shrinking. So when I say nominally, what I mean is just digits on a screen. So basically dollars sloshing around in the system may be growing, but the actual real value, the real productive value of those dollars is shrinking in value, as we know, as we see inflation. Another trick that they do that Canadians seem to be getting a wise to is the massive number of immigrants that come to the country. So again, you can talk about the economy increasing, but the thing is, if you're just bashing more and more people in the door, you're going to see growth in the GDP. But is it really productive growth? Is it growth that's actually helping the average Albertan, the average Canadian? And it's not like I have any animosity towards immigrants, but the thing is when you jam that many into the country all at the same time, you're gonna see a spike in the need for teachers, doctors, nurses, policemen, all these things that you're going to need. It's going to goose the GDP again. So now Canadians have become wise to that, and we've actually had shrinking immigration. And what a surprise that we see a shrinking GDP closely on the heels of that shrinking immigration towards Canada. So.
Well, and the socialist, I guess, mantra is that we're gonna pay for you. Everything's gonna be taken care of. That only runs so long. And I think it was Margaret Thatcher that said, other people's money eventually runs out. And the idea of bringing in a bunch of immigrants, and again, I'm not against it either. It's just that it has to be planned and it has to be controlled so that you're bringing in the brightest and the best, and they're building the economy as opposed to sucking it dry.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's where we agree. Certainly on what do you see as far as Alberta? I mean, there's obviously been. We've had debates with Kenny and Keith Wilson, or Jason Kenney and Keith Wilson recently. There's obviously a lot of talk, and I didn't really want to get into Alberta, but I mean, obviously our economy has a lot to do with that, and that's where I wanted to sort of stick with you. But as far as Alberta's concerned, I mean, I still feel like we are, as far as a province is concerned, it seems like we're doing fairly good as far as continuing to produce, but we are losing a lot of people, I believe. Do you have any thoughts on that, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, just sort of recapping last week, very emotional response out of Kenny and out of Keith Wilson, very fact-based, very logical arguments. So it's really interesting just to watch it. Is and I'm sure most people have seen it out there. It's like you ask people what's a good reason to stay within Canada, and it's a very emotionally driven response, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's almost like we're talking past each other when there's a logical side and then the emotional side, and I guess there needs to be a bit of a meeting around what exactly does that mean. But I forgot your question.
I was thinking economically. I was wondering what you're seeing as far as Alberta economically. I mean, we have the chains on us. We have all of the roadblocks being put up around us. But I still feel, aside of the carbon tax, because I think that's going to be the killer for sure, is when we bring in additional carbon tax and really, I guess, jack up the prices of everything. I mean, if fuel goes up, if there's a carbon tax on fuel, that trickles down into everything that's moved by a truck or a train or a plane. So it's going to have massive inflationary, I guess, outcomes. And so we're not going to be saved, I guess, in Alberta, but we certainly have a much stronger engine, it seems like, than other provinces. How do you see us faring, I guess?
No, you're absolutely right. That all it really is, and I don't think it's a surprise to anybody in your audience, it's just another tax grab. It's just another way to squeeze, especially Albertans, because now they're terming it an industrial carbon tax. Well, where's most of the industry in oil and gas located? It's in Alberta, so it's basically just another grab. It's not going to do anything to quell carbon if that's what you're after. So yeah, it's just another level of taxation at Canadians and Albertans. And we're one of the most heavily taxed areas in the entire Western world, which is probably no surprise to everybody. So it's just continue going to grind inflation higher, continue to put more money in the coffers of the politicians, and basically do nothing to the said objectives around that, and frankly make us much less competitive with other parts of the world. So now, that being said, and you alluded to it, Albertans are one of the most productive, if not the most productive province within the Western world. But there's only so far we can take that without being ground into the dirt through taxes. and inflation. I think we'll continue to be the most productive in across Canada, but I think people are getting sick and tired of it too, and a lot of that feeling is, hey, I'm working. You could even think of it in these terms: I'm working for the government in the morning, and I'm working for myself potentially in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way effectively people are waking up to that realization, even in other parts of Canada, and frankly, they're sick of it. So I suggested way back when that there's two ways to get us out of this mess that we're in with the amount of debt that we're under as a country, which is spanning about 1.2 trillion as at the federal level right now. We can either inflate it away or we can increase productivity. And you do see sort of some glimmers of hope out of Ottawa around trying to increase productivity, but for the most part, it's just a bag of hot air that comes around it. You can do all the speeches you want. You can do all the rhetoric you want. You can blame whoever you want, but until sort of that shovel is in the dirt, your productivity as a country is never going to improve. And I haven't seen anything that's led us towards actually increasing our productivity within Alberta or Canada.
Did you see Mark Carney speaking in New York?
I saw snips of it where we're going to be Canada strong and making America great again. So that's fun.
But it's astonishing. I mean, some polls have come out recently saying that they're even more Canadians are more, I guess, attracted, or they believe in the Carney government even more so now than when he was elected. I'm just each day is another level of bewilderment, I guess, on my part, because I just cannot see why Canadians can't see this as a show. It looks like a puppet show, because one day he's saying elbows up, we have to fight the orange man bad, and then next he's in New York sucking up to some business. What was it again that he was speaking at?
Yeah, the New York Investment Conference or something like that. Yeah.
New York investors. I'm just going to bring it up just because it's just so funny. Stand by here. He can't pick a side, first of all. If you hate the orange man bad in the United States, and everybody should refrain from going there to spend their money, how do you then come back and say this?
Canada Strong will help make America great again.
Prime Minister Mark Carney called for a new partnership with the United States during a speech in New York on Thursday, striking a conciliatory tone as Canada finds itself excluded from talks on a revised North American trade pact.
Is anybody surprised?
Well, it's the gaslighting is just incredible around it. And the thing is, people like you and myself have been saying this all along. And it's like, why are you shooting yourself in the foot? You have the greatest economic superpower completely running across our southern border, and you're sitting there shooting yourself in the foot economically by starting a bunch of rhetoric and trying to go against that.
Yeah.
And it's like, did the Carney government finally wake up and go, oh boy, we actually do 80% of our trade with these people that are south of the border? And what's even continues to be more baffling around it, they continue to insult Trump, but they forget that 100 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. 100 million.
Right.
So that's 140 times the size of our population is voting for this one individual. And you're not just going against one person in this battle. And if you think that Trump is going to disappear after 2.5 years from now, I think you're going to be sadly mistaken, because the policies are going to remain.
Right. So speaking in regard to Mr. Orange Man, there's so many questions. I mean, you and I and the rest of the world are sort of up in arms. I mean, Carney, to me, it feels very much like a controlled demolition. And I really can't put my finger on anything that Donald Trump is doing as far as that's concerned. And I think that that's part of the plan is, this is not a plan, or it doesn't look like a plan. It looks more like haphazardness. Do you have any thoughts on what he might be creating as far as stirring up the hornet's nest, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, the thing is, there's definitely a lot of conversation around, has Donald Trump gone crazy? Has his administration gone crazy? At the end of the day, I do think he has a plan around this. And effectively, in my mind, what he's doing is completely rewiring the economic and financial system of the world. And he needed to basically cause a number of pieces of disarray in the Middle East to be able to do that. And so now what has happened since the Middle East conflict has flared up yet again, that system is starting to be rewired. There was talk last week of China now getting a lot of their oil and gas out of Alaska. And if that's not rewiring the system, I don't know what is. There's definitely this Don Rowe doctrine where it's basically, here is our hemisphere, North and South America, that we're going to keep to our knitting around, and Russia, China, you worry about your hemisphere. Right. And it's there's definitely conversation around, well, it was the Europeans that were sort of pulling the puppet strings around the Middle East, and the Russia and the China and the United States thing all along, and effectively they're getting snuffed out of the system entirely. So that's my perspective, is we will continue to see the movement towards these bigger wins in the United States, financially, economically, logistically, of rewiring of the way the system works. And that's not only on an actual physical materials, oil, critical minerals, that type of thing, but it will also be the financial system is going to get uprooted and rewired. The way it works in the past is no longer acceptable to the Americans, and they're rewiring the system. And so now, if Mark Carney has any wits about him, he would recognize that, and recognize that Donald Trump's system is winning. The progress is moving towards this, whether Canadians have all the elbows up that they can or not. We'll continue to be a failed state if we align ourselves with Europe. And frankly, I don't think the Americans will put up with it either. So,
okay, I'm going to point out one more thing in regard to Mark Carney. And I just want to put it on the record and make sure that, our viewers and hopefully many other people see this, is that I don't think that Carney and his government have the best interests of Canadians in their purview. And I point to his family live in New York. His businesses all got shuffled down to New York or to offshore businesses so that they could hide their taxes, be a tax shelter or be in a tax shelter. So they didn't have to pay Canadian taxes. And now this is the person telling us that we should be paying, carbon taxes, and we should be paying this, and, we should be adding more to the system, bringing more people in. And I'm just flabbergasted at people not recognizing that you can't speak. Well, there's two faces, right? He's speaking out one side saying that you should be doing this, but on the other hand, my family all live in New York, and it's the greatest place to be, because that's where I live, and my kids go to the university in the United States, and that's where I hold all my funds. Anyway, I just had to point that out because it's such a farce. And go ahead.
Yeah, there's some chart out there that shows Canada's GDP declining by 0.6%, but Brookfield's stock prices increased by 20%. So to me, that speaks volumes of where sort of allegiances lie. So
they managed to get a lot of contracts, it seems like. I don't know, magically.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to bring up this other clip that I mentioned, and so we can talk about this one. Came up recently. I don't know how long ago this was, but it is essentially CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, admitting that trillions of dollars. I know that it's just mind-boggling the number of zeros that we're talking about on a regular basis, whatever fiasco, whatever grift is going on, but trillions of dollars, that's tens of thousands, it's thousands of billions, and being used to build data centers and power grids will come from ordinary people's savings accounts, pension funds, and says it's mandatory. Okay, so we're just going to listen to this, and then I'm going to get some feedback from Brett.
If we could get more and more Americans to think about growing with the United States, we will have far than enough money to invest in this infrastructure. But as the governor was talking about, the need for electrons is growing every day. Some of these, if we're going to be the leader in technology, which we are, if we are going to be the leader in AI, which we presently are, it's just going to require trillions of dollars of investments. And if we don't invest in it, China will be the global leader in this. And so to me, it's not whether, this is a must. And if you think about how that translates, it translates into a more dynamic economy. We need the United States economy to grow at over 2%. We need the US economy to grow at 3%, especially with the growing deficits the federal government has. And so much of this money, not just the project, is going to be coming from the private sector, from savings accounts, from pension accounts, from insurance companies, and on and on and on. The whole world is in need of improving the infrastructure.
Okay, Brett, what do you have to say?
Well, yeah, a few things about that. I don't think he's wrong in the line of thinking of around AI and data centers. The U.S. government has basically taken a stance that AI and this next generation of computer learning and that type of thing are like the new Manhattan Project of the age. And so if you're unfamiliar with the Manhattan Project, it was effectively harnessing the power of the nuclear energy and nuclear bomb after the Second World War. And they did a lot of things to basically ensure the United States was ahead of that. So now when he talks about, everyday Americans investing in this, there's what's called the passive bid in the US stock market. So no matter what is sort of happening in the world, what people in the United States do is invest through their 401k, which is equivalent to RRSPs in Canada. And it's called a passive bid. So every single month, they basically just allocate a percentage of their income and it just dumps it into the stock market. And so that passive bid gets attributed across mainly the S&P 500, but sometimes into the Dow. Especially when you look at the massive size of the stock market in the United States, companies like NVIDIA, Apple, Google, Amazon type thing, because they make up about 40% of the stock market in the United States, there is that passive bid that just comes up underneath of those things like that. So I think that's sort of what he's talking about when it's the everyday American, investing in that. It's just that mindless passive bid. And so now there's a couple of things that are concerning around that. Generally, the retail investor is the bag holder. for a
Right.
lot of this stuff. So they pump up these bids constantly. There's a floor underneath it, and usually there's a rug pull, and it's the elites and the bigwigs that don't take it on the chin. It's usually the mindless bid
That's
or
right.
the retail investor that's going
Right.
to get the rug pulled out from underneath.
And you're talking about the pump and dump, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So now that being said, I don't think that there's going to be a big crash in the economy anytime soon.
Mhm.
And this passive bid, or this injection into the stock market, is so big that it makes up about 60% of the investing in the U.S. stock market right now.
Mm.
And so until basically boomers actually start retiring and that passive bid is undermined, then we're going to continue to see the stock market propped up.
I see.
So when's that going to happen? I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows when that's going to happen. But what's a really interesting dynamic is if we keep on feeding into this AI and keep on giving this passive bid to AI, it's basically what we are funding our own undoing.
Mhm.
There's going to be no more of those white collar jobs that I started out in. I'm certain that those jobs just won't exist going forward. And so what happens to all those people that have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on school and expect to come out and have a white collar introductory job that just don't exist anymore? And so we're actively funding our basically undoing with this constant bid
Right.
under AI. And so what does that mean? Yet another reason to sort of look into precious metals, gold and silver. There's going to be a massive amount of people that not only are retiring as the baby boomers, but also this next generation that were sold a bad bill of goods that said, hey, if you go to school, get good grades, you're going to get a job coming out on the other side, and hopefully have a return on investment of that schooling that you had. Well, that's no longer the case anymore.
Right.
I think any person that's going through school these days, before you even put dime one into it, is do an analysis of like, okay, how much is this going to cost me for this 4 years of education? What do I expect to get out on the other side of it? And does the circle square? Does the amount of time, money, and effort that I put into this for 4 years, am I going to yield results on this on the other side of this? Or am I just going to be, a barista at a coffee bar making minimum wage? And I think far too often people do not do that analysis. And what does that likely mean? It likely means that there's going to be a bigger explosion of social services that are going to be required, especially to people that got sold this bad basket of goods. And so they're going to be looking for those government handouts as well. And so this AI almost perpetuates itself into forcing us to be more productive. But the thing is, there's that gap in the middle, both with the baby boomers, that are expecting these payouts, as well as people that are new to the workforce that may have expected something and are going to be disenchanted with it and looking for social handouts around it. And I would expect the debt levels to get higher and the stock prices to get higher as a result of this. But it all comes at a cost, and that cost is inflation at the end of the day.
Well, I had a bit of a different take, a little bit different take watching this. Is it, to me, it seemed like a bit more nefarious in its flavor, and I think that's why it's sort of making its rounds on social media. This clip with Larry Fink is to me, it sort of accentuates the need. And you talked about this gold and silver and holding your funds outside, or holding a good portion of your funds outside of this system that is controlled by the Larry Finks of the world, so that they're not necessarily. And I said this with Mark Carney. I mean, he's not in it for you and I. There's definitely, a very self-centric mindset when it comes to these people, and they're not concerned about the little guy. They're not concerned about the useless eaters that are funding their big funds, the Black Rocks, the I can't remember the other names of the funds, but anyway,
Streets, the Vanguards, yeah,
exactly. Anyway, so on that note, are you seeing a lot of energy around gold and silver as far as Bow Valley Credit Union is concerned? Are you seeing a lot of excitement around what you're offering at Bow Valley?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a ton of interest around it, especially at the beginning of 2026. It's kind of funny. People love to buy things when you're getting really bid up.
Yes.
So we saw probably more activity in the first 2 months of 2026 than we've ever seen. But that's kind of the exact wrong time that you should be getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
You should be getting into it kind of now when it's a bit in the dumps. We've definitely seen a leveling off period of gold and silver. We seem to have about a constant bid under $4,500 US for gold and about $72 US for silver. So anytime I see the price dipping below those levels, I'm an interested buyer. Just because there is that constant bid for gold and silver from the central banks, because the central banks recognize what's happening. They recognize that especially the Americans have gotten themselves into so much debt. There's no possible way that they can pay this back. Good old Larry Fink is, talking the right talk about, hey, yeah, we have to have our growth at least 3%. He's not wrong with that, but the thing is, if it's just you get that 3% with constant money printing, that's not a way to get about it.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. So, to actually grow the market by 3%, or not by 3%, but up from 2 to 3%, that means constant buying. It means constant. They're really just asking the American people to take out more loans, are they not?
Yeah, for the most part, but I would also consider thinking about the rewiring of the world system as well.
Right.
So it's great, the idea of helping out everybody in the world and lifting them out of poverty and that type of thing, but it's a give and a take to a large degree, unless you're increasing the productivity of people as a whole. So even consider it this way: for every dollar that we're not making over here, there's somebody in China or Asia that's making that dollar.
Mm-hmm.
So our standard of living is declining while theirs is improving. And, there's much to be said about, well, maybe our standard of living is too high. But the thing is, I don't know if I feel that way, or most Albertans feel that way.
Right.
But to lift all boats and with the tide, the productivity has to increase to be able to do that. I think perhaps the smarter minds in the world thinking AI is going to be able to do that, but they'll have to enlighten the rest of us where they think the average person is going to actually be working if AI takes a lot of these white collar jobs away. So
how do you fit into that scheme is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's another case for why are we continuing to import people into Canada, into Alberta, if it's just effectively another mouth to feed.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't produce enough productive jobs for Albertans as it is, then why are we importing more people just to prop up the Tim Hortons of the world, to bring in temporary foreign workers rather than giving your kid a job, that type of thing. So AI will decrease the demand for new bodies to be basically created and put into an economy, just because there just won't be as many jobs around until we sort of get to the other side of this. So
yeah. Do you consider it like the I guess the AI revolution, like the industrial revolution, changed our economies from more of a farm and small business to industrial? I mean, would you consider this kind of like that?
I would probably even put it more in the bucket of the formation of the internet, or something more tangible like railroads. So same thing happened with the internet and railroads. There was a massive amount of investment, just like there has been in AI in the past number of years. And so railroads, as an example, a number of them went bankrupt just because it's a massive capital infrastructure that needs to come in place. So now we continue to see the benefits of those capital expenditures, decades and in some cases centuries ago. But the thing is, it formed a bubble at the time. So I wouldn't suggest it's more like the Industrial Revolution. I would probably put it on that scale because, is it all that more productive that you get more reporting? I don't know. People usually have a pretty good business instinct around that. And that's effectively what HR or AI can do, is just improve your reporting, any sort of that paper pushing activity. Is it that mind blowing like a railway? I don't know. It's hard to say. So
interesting. All right. So let's cap it off with I guess your thoughts on I don't know, Alberta economy, your family, the people that come to your business. What do you think that they're seeing, and what should they expect, I guess, moving forward here in Alberta and with Bow Valley Credit Union in mind?
I would expect Canada and Alberta, largely because Alberta is somewhat stymied because of Canada, expect to see not massive productivity gains within Alberta. I would continue to expect massive amounts of currency printing, a continued debasement of the currency. So anybody with savings out there in your banking, in your checking, in your savings account, expect the value to be worth less in 10 years from now. So, expect to see that loaf of bread in 10 years costing $10 instead of $5 now. Expect that jug of milk cost $12 per gallon instead of the $6 that it is right now. And that's effectively that debt and inflation at work in the background. I would expect to continue to see that, because we are just not seeing productivity gains fast enough to basically make up for that inflation that's required, that currency printing that's required, which ultimately the federal government's going to choose to do. Probably in my mind, one of the best use cases for getting control of an independent Alberta is so we get control of our own dollar, because we have absolutely zero influence on how much they spend and print in Ottawa. And anybody with savings in the background is going to pay the price for something like that. So,
well, I know it wasn't the impetus for creating Bow Valley Credit Union. I don't know when it actually came into existence. What was the year, just for my understanding?
Yeah, 1958. So we've been around for 73 years now, 72, 73 years. Yeah.
Well, the reason for my interest, and I'm guessing a lot of other Albertans' interest in Bow Valley Credit Union, or in credit unions in general, was obviously from 2022 when they started freezing accounts. And, there was a lot of people that reached out to Bow Valley Credit Union and the like. And so I tend to feel like we have a bit of control not that we have ultimate control, but I think it's a better option as far as if you have to work with a bank. I think that Bow Valley Credit Union is a great opportunity for people. I'm just going to bring it up here. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but
sure, yeah.
Go ahead.
It's especially during the trucker convoy.
Yes.
We made a conscious decision not to freeze people's accounts. What was really surprising to us is other financial institutions actually freezing people out of their bank accounts, and we didn't receive one email, one phone call, one letter regarding this. And our position was, we thought it was a peaceful protest. We were just abiding by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms to be able to do that. And frankly, the federal government was offside, and we were going to fight it to be able to do that. And ultimately we were proven right, just because that was proven to be an overreach with the Emergencies Act. So of course the federal government continues to fight that, and we'll see what happens in the Supreme Court. But at the end of the day, I think they're treading on very thin ice if they can freeze people's accounts for political activism.
I never asked you about this before, so I appreciate you bringing it up. But you ended up fighting against the government. You pushed back against the government and their request to freeze counts. Is that what you?
We never had a request to freeze
I see.
accounts. That's the thing.
Well, that's
financial
a blessing, I guess.
institutions,
Yeah.
ATB, RBC, TD, they just started doing it. So that might be good enough for them, that Chrystia Freeland stands up at a podium and says we're starting to freeze truckers' accounts. It's not good enough for me.
Right. Well, amen to that. Thank you so much for standing up for Albertans and Canadians alike, really. There's a question, and I hadn't ever asked you, I don't think, before. If you want to be a part of Bow Valley Credit Union, do you have to be Albertan? Is it?
Yeah, for the most
Albertan
part,
only?
yes.
Yeah.
You have to be an Albertan. We are working on getting sort of interprovincial jurisdiction, being able to supply what we have to people outside of Alberta. For the most part, we're so busy with just within Alberta that,
Yes.
that we're not trying to reach out to any other provinces, and we are working on systems to, and really what it comes down to, just the legal forms and how we can operate outside of Alberta. But some people find it difficult without a branch close by. Some people
Sure.
have no problem. They can do things over the phone, the email, our app, our website with no problem, and they don't need a branch in their location. But for some people, they like the assurance that we're in their community. So.
And I just want to highlight that you just opened up a branch in Red Deer. That was your latest add to your, herd,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to use that reference. But you've now added a Red Deer branch. Do you have any plans for more branches throughout Alberta? I'm guessing you do, but
Yeah, so we have 9 branches throughout Alberta, mainly in the Calgary region. Just that's where the Bow Valley flows. In Red Deer, it's a lending and advice center, but we're going to start renovations fairly quickly into getting it to a full service branch with cash services for people. There's a ton of demand in Central Alberta. We do have other locations we're keeping a very close eye on. We need to finish up some of these other projects that we have outstanding before we sort of do any announcements around that.
okay.
But they are planned other locations in Alberta. We plan on expanding. So,
Well, that's wonderful. Brett, thank you so much for being here. Was there anything that you wanted to end off with before we say goodbye?
No, yeah, just come check us out at Bow Valley Credit Union on the interweb. You can find us there. We've got some really unique products around gold, silver, and Bitcoin. It makes it really easy and accessible to everybody. We also do lending against physical gold and silver, which a lot of people have taken a keen interest in. We're working on the same thing with Bitcoin, so being able to lend against Bitcoin.
Can I interrupt
and-
you just for a second?
Yeah, you
Just
bet.
because it's on a personal note. But so if I owned, let's say, silver, and I wanted to borrow against my own silver,
Yep.
that's what you're saying,
Yes.
and essentially small percentage of interest or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's at prime for Albertans right now. So it works like a home equity line of credit. So
Yeah.
if you have a house, you can take out the equity. Same thing with silver and gold. We store it with our partners, and then it's the trust me bro system doesn't work here. So we actually have to have it sort of up in lock and key
Sure.
under storage, and then we give you a percentage of that, and we find it's really attractive for people in the gold and silver community because they never want to sell their gold and silver, or
Right.
at least not yet anyway. So
We're not at that stage yet. No,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to get an update from you and to understand a bit more of what you're seeing out there in the world. So thank you so much for enlightening myself and our viewers.
oh, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, you guys, I'm just going to say goodbye to Brett. We'll finish off here. And Brad, if you don't mind sticking around for another 30 seconds, we'll just do a catch up. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Unscrew the News. I always say to you, let's keep our head on a swivel and let's stay sane together. This is Bruce, and I'm out of here. Thank you so much for watching Unscrew the News. I appreciate your participation in freedom in Canada. Share this information and help others to wake up. God bless.